When I was a kid, our family went to see the movie The Sound of Music. I think it was the first movie I'd ever been to, and I was just captivated by the story and the movie. And the scariest part for me was when the Von Trapp family was fleeing from the Nazi soldiers. And they went to the monastery, and the nuns took them in and let them hide in the graveyard in the monastery. And there was a scene there where the Nazi soldiers were looking through the monastery and through the graveyard, and it was dark and shadowy, and there was suspenseful music, and the children were crouching behind the gravestones and whispering to each other. I was so afraid. Well, our gospel story today is about fear. And so I've been thinking about fear and being afraid. You know, for me, fear is like a locked closet in my mind. There's no light in this closet, and I'm not really sure what's in the closet. I've never really explored it. I try to avoid this closet because every time I go there, I don't have a good experience. But the closet is always there, and sometimes I have to go there. Well, in the gospel lesson today, Jesus talks about fear. He's out in an open boat with the disciples, and a storm comes up and begins to capsize the boat. The water is coming in over the side. Jesus has somehow managed to stay asleep on a cushion in the stern. And so the disciples wake him up and they say, "Lord, don't you care that we are perishing?" And so he wakes up and gets up, and he calms the sea, stills the storm. And then in the calm that follows, he says, "Why are you still afraid? Have you no faith?" So what he seems to be saying here is that faith and fear are opposites. If you have fear, where's your faith? If you have faith, you're not going to have fear. Or the more faith we have, the less fear we'll have. Now, fear, it's like a primitive reaction of the human brain. It's meant to stimulate you into action in times of crisis. You know, when the woolly mammoth is bearing down on you, you're afraid, and you leap into action to get out of the way or to kill the mammoth or whatever you have to do. And if an enemy is coming over the hill, your fear impels you into action to defend your tribe and your family. So fear is a very important response in those situations. But, you know, fear is not really a very helpful emotion these days. I mean, there aren't any woolly mammoths bearing down on us, and our enemies aren't coming at us with spears. There are crises to solve. Yeah, there are problems to solve, but fear doesn't really help us to solve them today. What does help us is confidence, community, support, encouragement, solidarity, but not fear. Fear is a useless emotion now. Fear is like the lowest common denominator of the emotions. It's at the bottom of all our emotional life. You know, fear is often the underlying cause for other emotions. So when I get angry, often if I look deeper, I realize that fear is at the bottom of my anger. Or when I'm anxious, when I think about it, I find that my anxiety has really got some underlying fear to it. But healthy people know how to recognize their own fear and respect it. But bullies use fear to intimidate others. When I was in 8th grade, we moved to a new town. And I was thrown into a new class where I didn't know anybody in school. And I was kind of a small kid, kind of scrawny, not very confident. And I was a prime target for the school bully. His name was Randy Curran. And he would come sit next to me at the lunch table. He'd say, "Give me your sandwich." So I gave him my sandwich. He'd see me in the hall and he'd twist my arm until I cried out. So he made my life miserable, and I didn't want to go to school. I was afraid of Randy Curran. But then I made friends with my next door neighbor. He lived 2 houses down, Dave Keeler. And Dave was bigger than me, and he was bigger than Randy Curran. And when he became my friend, he began to watch over me. And one day, I was in the hall, and Randy Curran came by and started the same old thing. And Dave Keeler said, "Leave him alone." And he walloped Randy Curran in the face. And from that day on, I had no more trouble with Randy Curran. He was a bully. Healthy people don't use fear as a tactic. Bullies do. When he assumed office of the presidency in 1933, Franklin Delano Roosevelt gave an address was the inaugural address to the American people in the depths of the Depression. And he said, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." What he was trying to do was get the people to recognize that fear only weakens us. It's faith and resolve and community that strengthen us. And that's what he was trying to get us to draw on. At the very same time, Adolf Hitler in Germany was sowing the seeds of fear. He made other nations and other peoples to be the enemy of the German people. And he convinced the German people that they were being persecuted, that they were victims. He even turned the people against himself so that everyone was fearful of everyone else. And then he used that fear to make himself powerful. That's what bullies do. That's what tyrants do. They use lies and untruths and false comparisons to make themselves more powerful. There are bullies at work, there are bullies at school, there are bullies even in relationships, in marriages. There's bullies in politics. Jesus said, "Why are you afraid? Have you no faith?" So when he was in the presence of fear, he started asking questions. Tell me, why are you afraid? What is it that's paralyzing you? How can you draw on your faith instead of your fear to face what's happening? Sometimes being curious about what's making us afraid is better than being overcome by it. I think our country is at a place where we need to choose faith over fear. Faith in our Constitution, faith in the goodness of our people, faith in God. And we need to be wary of those who would use fear to sow distrust and paranoia. Now I know sometimes we get overwhelmed with fear. There's so many things to cause us to fear. And that's the time to turn to God, to turn to God's protection and to rest in God. Put your trust in the Lord and do good. When I'm afraid, there are 2 Psalms that I turn to. One, of course, is good old Psalm 23, "The Lord is my shepherd." It says, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Those metaphors of the rod and the staff being so dependable and such a support and such a strength to us. That's what God is. God gives us strength and support. It's a very comforting psalm. The other psalm I turn to is Psalm 121. I lift up my eyes to the hills. It says, the Lord shall preserve you from all evil. It is he who shall keep you safe. The Lord shall watch over your going out and your coming in from this time forth forevermore. God is always with us. And the Psalms remind us that our ultimate safety is in God. God never leaves us. God never abandons us. God is always with us. And we know that when we come into the peace of God, into the presence of silence, then all is well.